So welcome, 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 our remarkable colleague, Cliff. We so appreciate your consistent leadership and diligence. And as always at Setsi, we begin all things by giving thanks to the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We give thanks to all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We give thanks to all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So Cliff, can you please introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers and share a bit about your remarkable work, sir?
Well, thank you very much. What a great start. So I'm the CEO of the Global Steering Group for Impact Investment, for short, GSG Impact. And what do we do about that? We are there to drive real impact in three main focus areas. One of which is just building country by country, 45 countries now, another 20 coming along, all in development, each setting out impact practice in their country across the whole spectrum: demand of capital, intermediation, supply of capital, what happens with governments, what happens with regulators, the advisory people, and so on. We do a lot as well with impact transparency, regulation, reporting, just making visible what people are doing, what's positive, what's negative, of every investment, every company action, aiming to also make that a positive or negative monetary amount. And we'll probably come back to that later. All of that driving towards the SDGs, the Paris Accords, and getting capital mobilized where it's needed most. So that's what we're doing. My background actually is in the social sector. So, you know, I'm a biochemist by training, but I've worked with health, mental health, with prisoner rehabilitation, with startups, with social enterprises, with finance, and now with this global piece. So, that sounds like a sort of mess, doesn't it? Like, it just looks like somebody's tried to cook a cake, but it's just random items. But for me, there is a golden thread about all that, and the golden thread is always to try and leave people more capable for their own futures. That's the key for me. That's the key.
That's incredible. And thank you so much for giving us the context on your body of work. And I think that golden thread speaks to the capacity and strength of the work that your organization has done. Because if it's not for that remarkable journey of social enterprise development, reintegration work, startup work, community development work, nonprofit, all that work tied in, you wouldn't have the appreciation for impact investing that you do, or to be able to evangelize this work globally. So once again, I think that it's absolutely remarkable, and I appreciate your candor and leadership. Yeah, so
Thank
my
you.
question is, what's inspiring you right now? What has you curious, or what's keeping you up at nights?
Well, certainly what's inspiring me is this amazing list of impact leaders across the world. I mean, you know, really, in some cases, really working against the grain of their country, others being very supportive, very different circumstances, but all working towards this, sharing the know-how, sharing initiatives, collaborating, diverse by design. It's all about impact, but how does that work in your country? How does it work in your part of your country? How does it work with your government? How does it work with every part of this? And bringing those countries together with impact transparency so that all of the countries, not just the rich ones, but that everybody can have a voice about the future of finance. And that future of finance is being designed right now. So it's really important that every kind of country sees that, can take a voice about it, can see what's happening for their futures.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think far too often there's key demographics, even whole regions of the planet, the global south, that don't have a voice in how finance is shaped globally or internationally. So I think giving voice to various regions, jurisdictions, and nations is not important. It's vital to make sure that we create systems that are sustainable.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we've for, well, since the Second World War, there's been a design of the financial system which works very well for, wealthy countries like the UK for me, and Canada for you, and so on. It's actually extractive from the poorest countries. We have development of finance industries, don't we? And we push money across, and we think that we're doing great. But actually, if we just stopped being extractive with the financial system, we wouldn't need to do those DFI activities, and things would be much better for them. So, it's a really important piece. We are part of the design of the future of finance. That future of finance must be for all.
That's a perfect segue for my next question.
Okay.
Challenges and barriers you and your colleagues face, and what are some of the approaches you're taking to overcome some of these challenges and barriers?
Yeah. Well, I mean, number one is the funding challenge, and that's true, I think, of all market building organizations. The work is really critical. Without it, we just don't have a chance of achieving. We don't have a chance of achieving the climate goals, the social goals. Finance is so massively important, and we are a $3 million movement trying to shift a $120 trillion world of finance and investment. Now that seems like a tiny little mouse trying to tell an elephant where to go. How do we do that? I mean, we do look out for key points of change. We've been very lucky with our founder, Sir Ronald Cohen, who really he has this knack of spotting the future. And sometimes you think, huh, really? That's not going to happen. And then 10 years later, you find, yes, it has happened. So, that's been very positive. What else? Collaborations of the willing. We work with a lot of other organizations in common cause, and also surprising collaborations. Sometimes we've gone to governments. We've knocked on the door of their regulators, thinking, "Oh God, are they going to think about us? What are they going to think about us?" Only to find, "Thank you. We were trying to work on this. Thank you for helping us." So, it's the funding side is always tricky, but finding those key points of change, finding those collaborations, finding the people in surprising places for collaboration, and that way we can make some progress.
Indeed, I couldn't agree more. Sometimes it's bringing together those unlikely allies that has the greatest impact. So that's absolutely beautiful, sir. So
Yeah.
my next question, do you have a set of key priorities right now in your work you'd like to amplify?
Well, actually, we're just working on a new strategy, which will pinpoint our efforts much more sharply to say, what tools do we have towards the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the Paris Accords, the climate requirements. If you come back and talk to me a couple of months' time, I can tell all. Well, I can't right now, but in the meantime, we continue to work on bringing in really key countries. I mentioned 45 countries already. The next big ones will be China, Indonesia. That's another 270,000 people. 270 million people. And we'll also be working with some of the major finance centers, places like Singapore, a tiny country, massively important in finance. There's a number of those. And also to assist some more countries in Africa, because that's where a lot of the most harms at the moment are coming. So that's what we'll be working on in the shorter term, as well as the priorities around this future of finance. So what am I talking about when I say that? What we're seeing is more regulatory reporting. That's a starting point, and that's in Canada, it's in US, it's in Europe, it's in Japan, it's in Korea, it's in China, in three different places in China. So that's a starting point. Second part of it is impact transparency. So impact transparency says, if you're doing harm with your company or you're doing something positive, let's just show that, and public support is likely to come in on that. And if you're creating sin, what happens with governments when they see any kind of action that is sin, they can go and regulate it and tax it. That's what happens. That's what happens, because the final stage, can you actually put a monetary amount to the positive and the negative that you cause as your company, as your government? Governments create a lot of the good and bad as well, and that is the sort of final stage. So how are we doing that? We're working with an organization called the International Sustainability Standards Board. It's the standards board of the IFRS, and if you know your accounting, the IFRS is the global accounting system. I always think that there's I don't know, there are few things in life that you can avoid, one of which is death and another is accounting. You just can't get away from that. So we think that this is a way in which we can drive finance, make it much more easy to do the good stuff and make it painful to be the bad stuff. That's what we're trying to do. That's our priorities at the moment. And alongside that, making sure that the design of that system, as I say, works for all kinds of countries, not just the richest countries.
And I agree completely in terms of it's fascinating the work that's being done around impact-weighted accounting and just the work being done around disclosure. In Canada, we have some stuff coming out down the pipeline around climate disclosures. So this is really important, heavy work, but someone has to do it. It's daunting, but the fact remains that's the only way we're going to shape a future that's sustainable, but also inclusive. And as we work towards censoring justice, access, inclusion, diversity, decolonization, equity, all these terms, once again, transparency and accountability are key pillars of that. So my second last question, do you have what does success look like and feel like to you and your colleagues?
What does success look like? I would say that that impact transparency is the number one goal. I would say that it will be challenging to get it to 2030. Sir Ronald would say that it's next week, but we know it will take a little bit longer. There will be some serious geopolitics to overcome with it, and we need to be thinking about how do we incentivize not just the countries that really positively want to do this, but also the laggard countries as well. So I think that's enough priorities for us. I worry a lot about how the climate piece is seen as a sort of 2050 goal. I worry about that a lot, because you just need to look any of the data, any of the scientific data, and just look outside of your own country, and you will see the change process is not to 2050. The change process, if you're lucky, is 2030. So we need to speed up, and at the same time we need to think about how does that impact on people, particularly people in more vulnerable situations, in poverty, in indigenous populations, in the places where those changes are likely to hit most rapidly. So we have some really big challenges. We are proud of what we've done, but we're also very much aware that what we're doing is not nearly enough yet.
Indeed, sir. And I think it's actually ridiculous when you think about the young people on the front lines of some of the climate justice movements across the world to think that we can kick this down the road to 2050, when not just science, but policy, frameworks, philanthropy, so many sectors of the ecosystem that have advocated to make sure that we, as my grandmother would say, hurry up and take our time. But the fact remains, we can't take our time to 2050. We have to do things in a diligent, responsible manner, but the timeline's a lot shorter in terms of us as a species navigating the fact that capital markets are literally terminating us. So I
Yeah.
agree more.
Yeah, and we need to think about how, as well as the interventions that we need to deal with the climate crisis quite often cause harm for populations. And you see that very strongly in the poorer countries, but you also see it in the richer countries. I mean, in Europe, a number of initiatives to reduce reduce emissions from your car, from your truck, etc., in cities, because that creates all kinds of harms. It harms on the carbon side, but it also harms people. In London, for example, 4,000 children a year die from smog from cars and trucks. So what happens when governments say, "Hey, look, you can only come to a big city if you've got very clean emissions"? What happens is that the population revolt, and the government gets kicked out. So we can't assume that everybody in this world is with the angels. Most people, including probably people like me, have a level of a level of just wanting a good life. We don't want good things taken away from us. We have to be realistic about this. So we have to think about what gets called a just transition, a transition to climate change, alongside how does that play for individuals. And bringing those two things together is one of the most sophisticated and difficult issues around, I think. There are some solutions which are technological. There are solutions which people can adapt to over time. But it is tricky.
It's a pervasive challenge, especially when you look at a just transition from a systemic lens, and then I appreciate you alluding to an individual lens. It's very challenging, especially for various regions that feel that they're just now entering industrialization and being able to play at a global level. So there's a lot of contention, anxiety, and trepidation around all this. So once again, I appreciate your candor and your leadership and transparency. So my last question, do you have any closing thoughts or calls to action for our listeners and our viewers?
Well, look, it has to be the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the Paris Accords, the climate piece. We can see that the Sustainable Development Goals are not going to be achieved by 2030. We need to drive faster. Your grandma is really, telling me, press that lever. We want to go faster. But on the climate side, it's now obvious that 2050 is far too late. The floods and fires and droughts and increasing parts of the world that are becoming uninhabitable. We need to make that sooner. And the goals won't only come from impact investing. Impact investing is our particular tool. We think it's a really important tool. We know that the world of finance is very influential. So we think it's probably the most effective angle to make the essential changes happen. We respect and support totally the other efforts that other people are trying towards the same goals. All of it recognizing that this has to work for people as well as the climate. It's not easy. We do our best. We need to do better. We need to keep on finding the better ways of achieving this. And every time we speak to new people, we get some new ideas. And Victor, I'm sure you've got some new ideas for me as well.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time. And your leadership is always, I'm always inspired and impressed by the remarkable work that you're doing, as well as your remarkable colleagues at the Global Steering Group. And as always at Setsi, we close all conversations by giving thanks once again to the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We give thanks to all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We give thanks to all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. Thank you so much, Cliff. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Victor.